Hi everyone, and welcome to our next session, External Development Framework, The Keys to Industry-Leading Partnerships by David Lam. My name is Isabelle Bismuth from Ubisoft Montreal, and as a member of the XDS Advisory Committee, it's my pleasure to introduce this session by one of my longtime colleagues at XDS. In addition to our involvement in the XDS organization, David and I share a similar passion for building long-lasting relationships with our partners, as well as the constant will to improve the way we work. In this presentation, David offers a realistic and humoristic look at the challenges and the misconceptions we encounter in our day-to-day work. During the session, don't hesitate to ask your questions in the chat, as we will be back afterwards with a live Q&A. And now, please help me welcome on our virtual stage, Mr. David Lam.
Hi, thanks, Isabel. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks, everyone, for joining me today. External Development Framework, Keys to Industry-Leading Partnerships. Let's get into it right away. So the goals of this presentation. Reveal best practices, obviously. Discuss common misconceptions. And to bring value to those new and seasoned to external development. So it's been done many times in terms of communication and trust in that topic. I won't beat it to death, and forgive me if I go off on a tangent, maybe a little bit on some of these things, but if I go off too much, you have permission to treat me like Robin in this picture. Let's get going here. So the important role we play as external development managers, we are the key intermediary between internal and external teams. Our role is critical in its success, and you are advocates on both sides of the fence. You're the tiebreaker that moves things forward. There's also a tiered aspect to this, as in there's the production side and there's a business side, and you need success on both sides for a long-term relationship. So this talk is about a call to modernize and evolve our process and what we do. The value that XDS brings is for us to re-examine and to push things forward and to share. So hopefully you'll find from this presentation that I'm doing my part. Also, what's important is that we need to evolve how we behave. And so planning and long-term goals and balancing overarching needs are constant things that we need to face. But are we thinking about how we approach our process and our behavior? And I think those are two key things that we need to evaluate constantly and improve. So essential guiding principles. So this is where I break the Batman and Robin promise here and talk a little bit about trust. So what is your default position in terms of, do you give people trust and let it erode over time, or is trust earned with you? And so why I ask this is that positioning really helps determine and has a trickle-down effect in all aspects of what we do. So, do you second guess your partners in terms of important decisions that are made? How does that affect your mindset towards transparency? Also, negotiation and relationship building overall. You can see how there's a trickle-down effect, and it really affects how you approach and what your first step forward is with your partnerships. And my argument to you is that you have much more to gain than to lose by giving people trust by default. Lastly on this is relationships are much greater and better than transactions. And so what I mean by a transaction is the basis of, hey, you give me this amount of money, or I give you this amount of money, you give me this stuff, right? And so that's the basis of everything of what we do. where relationships come in is through the thick and thin of it, that it's more than just, you know, getting those funds or getting those tasks complete. And so I'm having one of those moments where my kids are interrupting my presentation. All right, let's keep going. Breaking down partnerships. So let's go to this. Everyone who's been in external dev for any time will probably have had these conversations and have faced this scenario. So what I'm leaning towards is how do you handle problems? When the road gets bumpy, what do you start evaluating? What model do you use to figure out where the problem is and what you need to correct? So this is where this comes in terms of the internal teams, the service providers, and the interface, and the importance of understanding the interface. So what is the interface? Tools. So the tool set you're using, the engine, you know, what type of, you know, mention the other meme, email, like is email being used? Are you using FTP? How progressive is the tool set that you're using, and how much of that is a blocker, and do you need to modernize there? Process. So when I say tools in terms of email, do you do feedback over email? Do you have gates in which you have official known review points for whatever you're doing, whether it's code or content? You know, what type of infrastructure and access do your partners have? And what are you supporting on your side? And so depending on the project, company, studio, all of these are contributing factors that will really either expedite and make things efficient or drag you down in terms of overhead. So best practices, you know, are you learning from past mistakes? Are you aware of your flaws in your process or tooling, and how do you get around them to kind of short circuit these kind of pitfalls that you face? So learning from where we were and where we're going, and utilizing that to where we're going is extremely important. And the importance of the POC, the point of contact in this, is very important. You make things go. And, you know, all of these, are you thinking about all of these things? Do you have a plan? And so having someone at the helm of this is extremely important, and obviously will be the rise or fall of the relationship. So how to start an engagement. So flex that interface, right? And so parts of that is doing your homework. So what's the history of your team? What's the strengths of the weaknesses and the weaknesses of your own internal team? And, you know, how are you looking at your partnerships in terms of, are you capitalizing on your strengths on both sides, or are you looking to fill some gaps that maybe your partner can backfill for you that are, you know, identified shortcomings on your side? So what experience in external development has your internal team had? You know, do some interviews. What has their experience been? Has it been positive? Has it been negative? And if so, dig in. Why was it negative? Why was it positive? And really kind of utilize that to kind of formulate your plan. You know, to start, what I always recommend for whatever engagement is pick the area that has greatest impact, but the lowest barrier of entry. So what is the low-hanging fruit? If your partner specializes in a certain thing and has shown great success, do that first, and then tag on the more difficult or things that are more discovery items as the relationship is getting more mature. So I've already talked about low-hanging fruit. Internal and external mix. I should probably talk about that. So it's really important that you take note of how much work is being done internally or externally within a specific discipline, just to make sure that your internal reporting structure and leadership is aligned to that. So, you know, if 95% of the work is being done externally, then your internal producer probably should have a bigger say and a bigger involvement with the external team, because their deliverables are largely external. So let's move forward to calibration and alignment. So defining success. It's really important that you understand and have active conversation with stakeholders, especially at the beginning, so that you understand what are you trying to solve. And you'll find in your kind of exploration that the definition of success will vary depending on who you talk to. And it's important for you to find that through line between all of these groups so that you can rally around what you're trying to achieve. So language and terms. So it's really important that everyone understands what approve means and what the next step is, or adversely, if something is rejected or needs revision, what does that actually mean, and what does that cycle look like? One thing that I found during my time at BioWare was that we had a third group. So it was either approved, rejected, or revision required, or approved with revisions. And this little kind of shortcut really added a lot of efficiency and velocity to the work, because we were able to build trust with our partners and with the artists that we were working with to say, hey, I know what you're trying to do here, tweak this little thing and move on to the next step. And that avoided a whole another iteration revision gate, and move things forward very quickly. And so you could really start to see that being used quite frequently in terms of that status, in order to move things forward quickly and to really jump through these hoops very efficiently. And it built a lot of trust with the team, and also empowered them to make decisions. Reporting and feedback frequency. So one thing that I have found with many of the very talented external teams that have been working in XDev for many, many years, they're able to build the best of breed in terms of reporting. So they see what all the big dogs are doing. They're able to kind of customize and iterate and whittle down to the essentials of how to communicate the most important information in a timely way. And so what's important as you're going forward is, what are those important metrics, and those are key questions that you want to ask to our partners, and have them deliver those answers to you. And so you can be at the hub of it. And if you're asking the same questions across all your partnerships, then you can gauge, how people are doing, right? And so, and I think one thing is also important is that your partner has the ability to understand and knows, what good looks like. And if they have access to these metrics, then they can see exactly how they're faring and how they're doing. So I think that's an important thing to build into your interface. So infrastructure and access. So how easy or difficult it is to onboard new teams, and who needs to access what, and right. So that will depend greatly on the type of work that you're doing. So anywhere from a character artist who only has to deliver within Maya scenes, that's it, or you have someone who's an engineer who needs flighted access, is a part of your stand-ups and needs to the agile access to the agile board, whatever how you're doing bugs, needs access to that database. Perforce obviously is a bare minimum for everyone, so it will vary, and so you need to understand what that setup is dependent on the content type. Next. So discipline of submission process. So who's owning the quality of this data and is a steward of it? Everyone needs to be, but how disciplined are you guys in terms of keeping gates in this to check, to buddy build and to buddy check things? Or is there a QA pass that happens at your partner to make sure that everything they're submitting is good to go? So setting the tone. So establish standards and stick to them. One thing that I've mentioned in the past to colleagues is that you need to be the Gordon Ramsay of external development. So what I mean by that is, setting the tone. How Gordon Ramsay got his Michelin stars is, being the person at the pass. The sous chefs will bring the food, and he determines whether it's good or it's bad, right? Whether to send it back or to push it onto his customers. And so we need to do that, and that's really important. And if you set that tone early, it may be difficult. While it may be difficult at first, it's really important that you understand what those standards are and you hold them, and there's no surprises. So what happens behind the scenes in that is your external partners are calibrating the team to make sure that they can hit those standards. So if your standards are low at the beginning and you're not staying on top of it, they're calibrating that team to say, okay, well, if this is the standard, this is the level of developer that we need, and it should be good, right? And when things ramp up, and if you kind of up those standards mid-production, then that's where people are disappointed. So I think that's really important to make that clear at the beginning. So exhibit behaviors you'd like to see. The whole don't do as I say and not as I do. That's not really a good standard to set. So try to exhibit the behaviors that you want to see in your partnerships. So if you don't want people to be late to your meeting, don't be late to the meeting. If you make promises in terms of deliveries, hold your promises. Therefore, it's really, it's much easier to be in the position of holding people accountable if you're holding yourself accountable. And accountability, I think I'm stepping over myself here. There needs to be a person whose sole responsibility and sole success is the external development engagement. So what I mean by that is when you have divided allegiances, so let's just say you have an internal person that has internal tasks and external responsibilities. When the heat is turned up and you have to deliver, let's just say with one big milestone, what's naturally going to happen is the external tasks are going to fall away because the internal tasks are going to take priority. And so what does that mean? That has a compounding effect to for the one reviewer or person point of contact can have a multiplying effect to 10 or 20 or however many developers are dependent on them servicing the needs of the external parties. So it's really important that you identify people that their success is tied with external development. So getting ahead of the problem, so front loading the work. So what comparison I have here is when you look at athletes. So athletes that perform on a day-to-day basis. The Olympics are happening right now, and you're seeing that all the hard work, all the pain, all the practices, all the sacrifices that are made, that stuff is not being filmed. It's the 10-second sprint. It's the 1 hour hockey game or 2 hours. Got to get that in as a Canadian. It's really important that you understand that you're only looking at the tip of the iceberg. So people that have success in external development, it's because they are getting ahead of the problem and have seen where things have fallen, right? And kind of anticipate that and get ahead of it and make sure that you're asking all the right questions and really doing your homework and preparing. So, keep that in mind. So when people get it right, it's not because they're lucky. It's because they've fallen down many times, and I'm one of them. So be a champion at all phases of development. So what are the phases of development? There's the courtship process. So what's important here is bringing the internal team along to share what excites you and the potential you see in this partnership, and involve them in testing, in your findings. You'll find that if you do that up front, you'll get people who are committed and invested to this relationship success. So signing the deal. So, what are standard terms? What isn't? So from my experience and the companies that I've been a part of, there are external internal central teams on Microsoft and at EA that really help support and standardize some of these things. And there are resources that you can leverage within your company, and hopefully you have that, so you can make sure that you know when you're kind of speaking broadly for your company, but also what are the specific needs for your project. So know the market. And so with you being a part of this conference at XDS, you are doing your part. And so being active and really taking a temperature of what's going on with your peers and in specific disciplines in the ecosystem is really important. No one can be siloed. And so things are always changing. I'm always learning. I'm learning something new. Sometimes it's validating what I've learned, and sometimes it's kind of challenging what I've learned. And so you being here is a part of that. So onboarding. So I've chatted about this a little bit. Is it usually slow? It's, no one says, oh, wow, our onboarding was lightning quick. That's a rarity. So usually it's slower than we would like. But how slow is it, right? Where are the pinch points? Can you leverage historical data and learning? And what has kind of been the crux of the problem? And working with your internal teams and tech art team is a great advocate and help to make sure that you can kind of overcome some of these problems. So contact sheets. Something that we have been doing at Turn 10 is setting up upfront on who the point of contacts are on both sides. So we have email addresses, names, and little photos, and we kind of use that as a best practice to make sure that we know who's working on what and who's responsible for what. And so when if someone's out and they need to kind of know who is who, they can look this up. So reporting expectations. I think I also talked about this a little bit, and leaning on your partners because they know best of breed. But also, how does that intertwine with your leadership team and what your stakeholders are expecting, and how do you kind of deliver them messages that they like to see? Whether it's green for good, red for bad. And how do you kind of give them snapshots in a timely way that they would like to see and at the proper cadence? So the importance of training, on-site and tool kind of training. One thing that we have done, and I think I've been very lucky to have the support of the leaders that I've worked with, is to have the carte blanche to visit and to have our teams on site and us to go on site. I would take for one visit equals like 100 Skype calls, right? And so I think it's really important that you make those commitments. And I think that I can't imagine a future without on-sites. They are critical. I think that COVID is obviously challenging that, but it's not ideal. And so as soon as travel becomes a thing again, I think that it is crucial that you go and press the flesh, as it were. Neil Thompson, my old boss, I'm coining his phrase. So thanks, Neil. So crawl, walk, run. So it's really important that you set teams up for success by taking things at a time, right? We can't go from 0 to 100. You really need to ingrain the knowledge and training into these key leads at your partner and let them grow the team from that understanding. If you have if you have 10 people or 20 people learning at the same time, it's highly inefficient. It's really stressful, and it's going to cost you more time and money. So in full production, anonymous feedback surveys is something that we've been doing at Turn 10. I think we've had 3 cycles of it now. We do them on a 6-month cadence. I think we started especially during COVID just to make sure that our partners felt like they were in an inclusive environment in which they could give us feedback, and just to make sure that we didn't have any blind spots or weren't deaf to certain things. So it's been really fruitful. And also we've been building the next survey. We're using the first survey to inform the next one to kind of ask the right questions. And so it's a good way of kind of taking external development health as making it as a priority. So mid-mortem, you do post-mortems, you do pre-mortems. Mid-mortems are important, again, for taking the temperature of where things are going. Development cycles are, many years. And so it's important that you make sure that you're not getting complacent. So there's always areas to improve. Mid-mortems are a way of making sure that you're consistently tuning things up. Business offsite. This is something that I learned since joining Turn 10, and it's something that has been a best practice tradition, is having this leadership team from our studio visit our key partners and discuss business. And so what do we do in the format of this is that, Turn 10 will talk about high-level business strategy of what's happening within Microsoft and Xbox, and also kind of what are the challenges we're facing as a studio and what our products or lineups going to be. And similarly, we have the expectation with our partners to share that same level of transparency of what's coming up in the future. And then we discuss where the overlap is, right? Where's overlap that we can find that synergy in order to make some steps forward and further deepen our relationship. So ramp down, it's really important that you have a set terms and set process here. What happens regarding access shutdown? What do you do with machines and hard drives? Do you have a formal post-mortem? What do you do with mailing lists and how do you deactivate those? One thing that I did at BioWare was a project summary of the costs and timelines that it took to make assets. Stakeholders really appreciate understanding where money was spent, how it was spent, what did you learn and what would you do differently, and utilize some of this data in order to, whatever the sequel is, or if there's a similar game with similar kind of challenges, you can use these metrics to formulate the base plan. And I think I am next to external art versus external engineering. So this is something that I've been learning. For myself, being a character artist for 12 years, and then moving into art direction and external management for content, and now with engineering and co-development. I've been kind of seeing and learning the back and forth here between the two. So I'll go through this quick. So similarities, there's an importance of established a cadence of feedback and review. Entrust leads and PMs to execute. You really need to grow the feet and the eyes and ears on the ground at your external teams in order to be your champions. That's really important no matter what you do. So laying the foundation in expectations and results, like I said before, in terms of setting that standard and holding that line throughout the engagement. And, it's more than a transaction, right? No matter what you do, we're about relationships and developing success. Choosing the right team for the right work, extremely important. And this all goes to the due diligence you do and how serious you take the kind of courting stage to kind of understand the work you're trying to do and the partner, and asking the right questions of what they bring to the table. So differences, there's a higher level of collaboration required, I believe, with engineering. Time zone has a play there. I think that's probably more crucial and critical. That's one thing that we've found at Turn 10. So can be more embedded in a sophisticated level of access. And so, how devs test the code that they're submitting is much more intricate, like I said, than someone that is just saving a MIA file. So found work. how many points are to a task can really blow up with engineering over art. And a layer versus tower, and what I mean by that is that with content, it's relatively flat. And so, if you have 10 hairstyles and you're only being able to deliver 8, you just cut the other 2. Whereas with the different code bases that you're working with and different modules that you're adding, or whatever, whatever type of work you're trying to do that's interrelated, and that has an architectural vision that you're trying to achieve, if you're not following that vision, that guidance, then you have a high risk of having something big that can get thrown away and need to be redone. So, which can be costly. So those are the differences and similarities that I've seen. So lastly, common missteps. So following my meme kind of theme to this presentation, I kind of put together a couple things, and maybe you, as the audience, can kind of read through, hopefully laugh a little bit, but we can maybe chat a little bit about the cardinal sins that are being played here. So let's get into it. So there's this one. So what's the misstep here? Is the failure to invest. So it's really important, and I think I've said really important many times. It's crucial that the people that you put in place to run external teams have experience, and that it's seen as a leadership opportunity, and that and don't underestimate the value and impact that the right person can have to these teams and to these groups. You never want to have someone who's leading a team externally that doesn't have as much experience as the people that they're leading. So you really want to make sure that that's considered. So next. So what's the cardinal sin here? So service providers have more choice, right? It's a highly competitive market right now. With COVID especially, I think it's really made us reach out more and have more need to what we're trying to deliver during this challenging time. And so bandwidth and resources are at a premium right now. And so we need to make sure that we are evolving how we behave again. And so our partners are looking for expertise and experience to partner with. They're looking for prestige of the portfolio and what they can do to augment their business. And they're not looking to be guinea pigs, right? And so it's really important that we consider this and lead with empathy on that. What's the sin here? So how many times have you heard of, that external development is this tap that you can turn on and off? Hopefully that you've gotten a glimpse that it's not that easy, and that there's a lot of work that goes into starting the machine, right? And so turning that thing off and turning it back on again is not as easy as they say. What about this one? So I'm sure you've thought this, and you've had other people say this to you. They should know this. When that happens, start to think about, well, why? Why is there miscommunication? What's happening? What role have I played specifically in this to lead us to where we are, right? It's a warning sign that we need to be more introspective and take a step back and figure out, where that problem is, right? And so it's really easy to say, well, they're doing something wrong. I don't know what they're doing. So it's a cop-out. So really try to make sure that you're not doing that. The last one. Be human. So at EA, one of the key values, and I think it's still there. I've been outside of EA now for 4 years, so I think it's still there. Be human was a very compelling value that stuck with me. And so it's something that I've tried to remind myself, right? As in, I make mistakes, they make mistakes, everyone makes mistakes. It's what you do with that, right? How do you handle tough problems? And how you do that, and your approach and where you grow from that is key, is fundamental. And that will really determine, who you are as a person, who you are in terms of the relationships that you build, and keep you honest, right? And so if I make mistakes and our team makes mistakes, I will say it. And I think it's important that we don't act like the emperor with no clothes on, right, walking around. So I think that is it for me. And so I wanted to say thank you so much if you made it this long, and really appreciate your time, and to the XDS committee, and again to Isabel for giving me this opportunity to present. And now I will wait for any questions that you have. So thank you so much.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Isabelle Bismuth from Ubisoft Montreal, and I'm also a member of the XDS Advisory Committee. I'm here with David Lam, senior producer at Turn 10, who just shared with us his years of wisdom and experience in external development. So hi David, great to see you.
Hi, yes, new haircut, so new and improved.
Excellent. So we're going to start the Q&A session, so please don't hesitate to put your question in the chat. So we'll start slowly. So we have a first question, David, from Sunny. Great sharing. My question, how do you choose a right team as external partner? What are the most important factors you will consider into your decision?
That's a meaty question. I think it's knowing your client, and what I mean by that is both the studio that I'm working for and the studio that I'm trying to hire. In a way, I work for both, right? As the kind of matchmaker in between. So knowing the strengths and weaknesses of both groups and seeing where they align. So for example, if scale is the most important thing, the altimeter, like what does that mean? Amongst those two parties, if we're trying to hit the utmost quality, and maybe there's more flexibility in terms of cost, there's always the push and pull, and kind of knowing the history, right, of both parties, of the studio that you're trying to engage and the studio that you're working for to find a partner for. Having worked at Turn 10, we've had partnerships that are 15 years in length, and I think it's really unique in this industry. So I've been really privileged to kind of be a part of, very new partnerships and some very old ones. And so there's different things that you need to do, right? And so I always joke that the first kind of year at Turn 10 was almost like being a marriage counselor and kind of digging and understanding the baggage and all the history. So hopefully that kind of gives a little bit of insight.
Excellent, thank you. We have another question. When you moved from BioWare to Turn 10, what surprised you that was different in external development, and what was the same? This is a question.
That's a very good.
This is a question from our fellow advisory committee, Dave at Phoenix.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say someone who knows me and is trying to get me in trouble. No, I'm just joking. Differences. I would say that the biggest difference. I was at EA for 16 years. And so some of the culture and best practices and compared that to Xbox were very different. And Xbox is a very mature organization, very much data-driven, very much about making sure we make the absolutely right decision. So at BioWare, I was given a lot of trust within that organization to kind of do what's best for BioWare. I had a lot of freedom, right? And so freedom to make some good decisions and some bad decisions, and kind of have that be the owner of my own destiny. With Xbox, especially coming into, as I said, long-term relationships, I was inheriting a lot, right? And so it was kind of really trying to find that balance of really understanding and listening, and the strengths and the weaknesses. And it was more about not trying to reinvent the wheel or really start from the ground up. It was about what do I need to do to kind of make it even better, right? So kind of where are our weak points and how can we kind of make it more streamlined. So I'd be remiss to not mention Glass Egg. Is the one that has lasted the longest for us during these 15 years. And it's been a marvelous relationship, and just the amount of trust that they've had with us, and dedication, and the quality of work that they do, right? And so it made my job really easy from that perspective, right? When you have a partner that is in the pocket and really knows what they need to do. And in fact, I learned a lot from them in terms of how they've worked in the past, and a lot of collaboration with them in order to kind of understand what we needed to do on our side to make things better and alleviate any kind of the points of friction. So, I'm not sure if I answered Dave's question, but it's there's a culture is different between Microsoft and EA as well. Being a part of a game studio or a company that's focused on games solely versus a company that has a wide range of businesses of hardware and software, and games as a part of it. I think came at a very unique time where games was really starting to shine. They had some change in terms of Phil Spencer reporting directly to Satya. Also with the acquisitions that we've had, I don't know how many studios it's been since I joined almost 4 years ago. I think probably I want to say 12 or 15. I think Sam, you're probably going to shoot me not having the right answer for this one, but it has changed dramatically, right? And so, and again, looking at who they've acquired in terms of the speciality there, it's just a different, I never thought a sister studio would be working on Doom, right? That's the coolest thing. So I'm a big fan of its software and Bethesda. So yeah, lots of change.
Perfect. Good answer. And you were talking about the freedom and the liberty that you had, taking your destiny into your own hands. Yeah. We also have a question regarding maybe one of they call it, what is one of the best mistakes you've made as an external dev producer? Felt awful at the time, but helped you learn a lot.
Oh wow.
That's a good one, yes.
Oh, felt awful at the time, but was a good one. Oh, I have a guilty personality, so I'm not sure if I ever feel good about any of the mistakes that I make. I would say that, okay, well, the problem, what's throwing me off in this is feeling good about it at the end. That's kind of difficult. What I'll say is, during my career, we had an external partner provide tech art for our team. And on the first day of one of the new employees, they checked out all of Perforce. And unfortunately, we had to, say, considering that they're tech artists, kind of not a good sign in terms of what the future is going to hold. So unfortunately, we had to swap out that person, and I had to request, because the team was very upset. We were blocked, especially with some key cinematic deliveries. And so we had to make a change there. What happened about a month after is someone internally did the exact same thing. And so how do you handle that when it's kind of egg on your face, right? And so what I try to do is to make sure that we play on the even playing field as much as we can, right? And so I don't have higher expectations for the staff I work with and work for, and vice versa, right? And so trying to make sure that we're fair in those circumstances. I'll kind of try to think of something where I made a mistake.
No, but it's okay. It's okay also, and we have other ones. Kyle is asking, hey David, how often do you return to utilize your external teams? After you have one provider you trust, do you ever reevaluate the market? Is that time
yeah,
that you don't spend, or is it inevitable?
That is a great question. I'm always reevaluating the market. One key thing when you change studios or change products, you have to look at your needs through a different lens, right? So, for example, at BioWare, story-based RPG, fantasy RPGs, right? And so on Frostbite, PBR and all that sort of stuff, and libraries of materials, and like there's a high technical proficiency required, also a high level of creativity, right? So scale is not quite as important. We need to make a lot of stuff, but on the other hand, quality of the individual assets, and also understanding the lore and the history and kind of getting into it, right? And so, you need to know what a Canary belt looks like, and, what does their toothbrush look like versus, hey, I'm going to be making the 100th car, right? And so, not to say there's any diminishing any side, but it's just kind of a different part of the brain that you need to engage. And so, and especially with what we're doing at Turn 10 with scanning and the high fidelity tracks that we're trying to achieve and have achieved in the past, it is as much a technical exercise as it is an artistic one. And so with licensing being a big part of it, so there's this giant kind of chain that you inherit depending on the product that you're working on. And so to answer your question, always looking, right? Always looking, never satisfied, always open for business. This is why I always attend XDS, even if I'm not actively in a dire need, because you never know. And I think the greatest advice I could give you is that even if a partner doesn't work out now, it's never no, it's maybe later.
Totally. I definitely agree. So good answer for this one. We have another one from Pete Johnson. Do you try and use multiple partners, or do you stay with one partner and ramp up the teams?
I think that you're talking about the days of work orders. And I think the days of work orders have gone, is a dinosaur. I think that the work is becoming so much more complex, and you have so much more codependencies, like just the ability to onboard a partner and get them within our ecosystem is a tax. And why would you want to continually pay that tax? So, whenever we're engaging a partner, we're always looking for repeat business. Just because you get to know that partner, you get to know their ups and downs, you get to walk that path in terms of how they understand working with you and you with them, and how do you get better, right? And so, I think gone are the days of this going to 10 different partners and giving them a little chunk. And it's just so much work, right? And so there's just too much to do. And the symbiosis that is required to get a fully developed relationship, it's just, to me, it's just antithetical to what I want to do.
Okay, so you're building the long term. We have another one.
Thank you for giving the short answer.
We have one question also from Eric Gonzalez. What is the best way you have found to communicate the issues that you mentioned to other stakeholders parties that don't have as much outsourcing experience? For instance, talking to upper management.
That's a meaty question. So what type of advice do I have about giving to maybe more newcoming vendors to how to talk to upper management?
Yes, this is what I understand.
Very specific. It sounds like you have a dilemma you need me to solve for you. What I would say in terms of just know your messaging, know what they're looking for, right? At every part, if you're talking to, let's just say the internal team, the lead artist on that team, they're looking for certain criteria, certain aesthetics. The language, do you speak art? Do you understand it? Do you have this understanding, mutual understanding that they have confidence that you can deliver the quality of what they're looking for, and you speak the same language? The project manager is looking for something different, right? They're looking to see, hey, have you made that lead artist happy? Also, I have my own things in terms of KPIs and metrics. What type of reports do you do? How do you communicate? Do you do stand-ups? All that sort of thing. And then when you look at the leadership, they're looking down and saying, are those guys happy? But these are my things on top of it. And so overall, like I talked about in my presentation, there's the kind of production level, and then there's the business level, right? And so Just coming from where I come from, I'm a bottoms up type of person, right? Just because of my background as a character artist. So if I find that if you could have the great business plan and great business success, but if you don't have a path forward with production, then it's meaningless, right? And so it really needs to be about the work and spin up from that to have business success and a business path forward. So what are they looking for at that business level? They're looking for, hey, what is your long-term objectives for your business? You know, where are the pressures there? Where are we trying to go? Where are you going? How can we align there? You know, are there cost pressures? What market are you in? Do you have a training pool in order to kind of bring in new staff? How well you align? Do you know the Microsoft business? And do you want to specialize, especially with something like cars, which takes a long time to learn and is very intricate and a long time to complete. So there's kind of like this kind of tiered level of interest. You just have to make sure you direct your messaging accordingly. Hopefully that answers your question.
I hope so too, but I think she did great on this one. Jordan also wrote to us, trust between internal and external teams is incredibly important.
Yes.
Can speak to an experience where that trust was broken mid-dev, and what, as the intermediary, how do you manage moving forward?
Very good, great question. And it's probably it happens all the time with the greatest teams, right? And so one thing that I always talk about with my teams and people that I work with is, one thing I love about games is the path and the journey about it. And I know that Sam was talking about crunch and the negative repercussions of it. It's something that, is not something to embrace, that's for sure. But I would say that there's an ebb and flow to at least what I've seen in my career. And so, you really get to know people when they're under stress and at their worst, right? In terms of, hey, it's on the line and we have to get this thing done. And you really get to see, what people are like. The mask is gone, right? And so, and not everyone can be at their best all the time, right? And so you have to be there. My job as the external producer is to make sure that if there are concerns, they are valid and real, and not something that is an emotional outlet, right? Or circumstantial, right? And so really kind of looking at things objectively, and also having a lot of empathy and listening for both sides. And you have to do a little bit of investigation, right? And so it happens with the best teams, right? And so whenever you're working not side by side and can kind of see the context and scenario, you really need to lay that out for people and, be the guardian at the gate, right? And so my job is to be the fair arbiter in this. And it's not to make, who I work for get what they want. But actually it is, but maybe not the way that they want it, right? And so if we're in it for the long term, it's not about me being right now, right? It's about us figuring it out, working through it, and then building trust from that, right? And so going back to my other comment of working together and being at war together, you form these relationships and bonds. And whether that's with studios that you work with and leads and project managers and owners, or if it's with coworkers on my side or producers or management, right? You kind of get a mutual respect because you've been through it together. And that's what I love about what we do in games.
Excellent. So thank you for those answers. Let me just look into the chat, I'm sorry. In situations, from Kyle, in situation where you have multiple partners working on the same work, for example, a multiple animation vendor, do you ever introduce them so their consistency and communication can be shared, or is all internal? So my understanding of the question is, do you allow contact in a way in between your service providers, or is everything going through your internal teams?
That's a great kind of theoretical question. And, we had these sorts of debates and what that utopia could look like, because the problem is that, you know, not only you have to have the same meetings with different partners, right? With the same messaging, it'd be so much more efficient if we could get everyone together in a room and to talk about things. Also, there's opportunities where, you know, me as the buyer or the client, I can't see from the outside in. And that's a really unique perspective that our partners have, and that they can share and commiserate about where the issues are, and then solve it for each other, because I can't see it, right? You know, going back to a further question about differences between Microsoft and EA, there's a big example of that, right? And so there are processes and security and things that affect procurement and all that sort of stuff that affect Xbox or Microsoft at whole, whereas I don't have that visibility, right? And so we'll get emails from different groups that go to our partners and asking for SSPA validation and these sorts of things, where I'm kind of like, you know, I don't know what they're asking you or what, you know, how you interact with them, because it's just so big, right? And so there is a lot of advantage. I think there becomes a little bit of concern around how that competition be healthy. You know, what if there's some subversion, like people kind of maybe, you know, if there's bad actors in this, how does that work and what dynamics would be in there? I hate to think that would happen, but we want to try to make sure that we're also staying in between to make sure that none of these things could happen. But I would love an ideal scenario in which we could all talk openly about this production together. And I think that the walls are kind of coming down a little bit in some areas. So we'll see where that goes, but that's a great observation, a great question.
Yeah, I think so too. This might be the next step towards our different types of organization, making sure that there's some like moral contract in between all of us to make sure that we can all continue to grow. So excellent. I need to tell you also that you have a few thumbs up in the chat regarding the memes you used in your presentation.
Oh, good.
So those have been appreciated by...
You know, what's fun, a little bit about the memes is those that are in our business, that are at the front line of this, I think will get it. You know, show my wife and she's just like, what the hell are you doing? You know, even some of the people who are reviewing this through this recording, you know, I was wanting a laugh track, Fred. I think maybe that'll be something for next year. So I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. I had a chuckle. I did test it out with a few colleagues just to make sure the ones hit. I think Isabel also gave me a thumbs down on a few, so those didn't make the cut.
I made a selection. It's okay. So that's great. So David, I think we're running out of time also. So it was definitely a pleasure working with you on this one. Thanks for sharing everything, all your wisdom with us, and wishing everybody a great end of day and an awesome XDS 2021. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your support, Isabel. And thanks everyone for staying for the Q&A and for supporting the talk. Really appreciate it. Anytime anyone has any questions, you know, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to share and to ramble. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.